Hashtag a single dad met his boss on the beach. Her words made him fall in love instantly. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink when Emma Parker said the words that would change everything. Sometimes the family we need isn't the one we're born into, but the one we build along the way. She had no idea that her exhausted employee, single father Mark Collins, was sitting just 20 feet away, hidden behind a weathered beach umbrella, listening to every word as she comforted a crying stranger. In that moment, something shifted in Mark's heart, something he'd sworn would never happen again after his wife's death 3 years ago. If you're enjoying this story already, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content that reminds us all of the unexpected ways love finds us when we least expect it. Mark hadn't planned on going to the beach that evening. His 7-year-old daughter Lily had begged him after a particularly difficult day at school where the other kids had teased her about not having a mom for the upcoming mother-daughter dance. How could he say no to those tear-filled eyes? So despite the mountain of work waiting for him at home, reports his demanding boss Emma had requested by morning, he'd packed a small cooler and driven them to the quiet stretch of beach 20 minutes from their apartment. "Daddy, can I build a sandcastle by the water?" Lily asked, her earlier sadness momentarily forgotten. "Sure, sweetheart. I'll watch from here," Mark replied, settling into his beach chair with his laptop balanced precariously on his knees. He needed to at least make some progress on those reports. The evening breeze carried the scent of salt and sunscreen as Mark tried to focus on spreadsheets and quarterly projections. His mind kept drifting to the parent-teacher conference scheduled for next week, the pile of laundry waiting at home, and whether he'd remembered to defrost something for dinner tomorrow. Being both mother and father to Lily consumed every ounce of his energy, leaving nothing for himself, certainly nothing for romance or relationships. His attention was pulled away from his work by a familiar voice. Emma Parker, the marketing director who'd been making his professional life increasingly challenging over the past 6 months, was walking along the shoreline. Mark instinctively ducked lower in his chair. The last thing he needed was for his boss to see him at the beach instead of working on her urgent reports. Emma wasn't alone. She was walking with another woman who appeared visibly upset. They settled on the sand not far from where Mark sat, just close enough that the wind carried fragments of their conversation to him. "I just don't know how to do this alone," the stranger was saying, her voice breaking. "The divorce was finalized yesterday, and now I'm suddenly a single mom to 2 boys who need more than I know how to give." Mark found himself straining to hear Emma's response, curious about how his always composed, sometimes intimidating boss would respond to such raw emotion. "I know it feels impossible right now," Emma said, her voice gentler than Mark had ever heard it at the office. "When my husband died and left me with Sophie, there were days I couldn't even get out of bed. But you find strength you never knew you had." Mark froze. Emma was a widow? With a child? In the 6 months he'd worked directly under her, she'd never mentioned a personal life, let alone shared something so intimate. At the office, she was all business, demanding excellence, pushing deadlines, expecting results. "How do you do it all?" the woman asked. "Your daughter seems so well adjusted, and you're running an entire marketing department." Emma laughed softly. "Trust me, it's all smoke and mirrors. I burn dinner at least twice a week. Sophie had to remind me about her science project last night. I'm constantly dropping balls and picking them back up." Mark couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Emma Parker who had emailed him at 11 p.m. last night about inconsistencies in his projections was admitting to being imperfect? "Sometimes the family we need isn't the one we're born into, but the one we build along the way," Emma continued, placing a hand on the woman's shoulder. "Find your people, other parents who get it, friends who'll show up without judgment, colleagues who understand when you need to leave early for a soccer game. That's how we survive this." Something about her words struck Mark deeply. Since losing Sarah, he'd isolated himself, convinced that he and Lily were on their own. He'd turned down dinner invitations, avoided the other parents at school functions, and kept his personal struggles completely separate from his professional life. "Daddy." come see my castle," Lily called, breaking his reverie. Mark looked up to see his daughter waving enthusiastically from the water's edge, her small hands covered in wet sand. He glanced nervously toward Emma, but it was too late. She had already turned at the sound of Lily's voice, and her eyes widened in recognition as they landed on him. "Mark?" Emma stood, brushing sand from her casual clothes, so different from her usual tailored suits. "I didn't expect to see you here." Mark reluctantly closed his laptop and walked toward his boss, feeling like a student caught passing notes in class. "I brought my daughter for some beach time. The reports are almost done, I promise." Emma's expression softened as she looked at Lily, who was now running toward them. "Is this your daughter? She's beautiful." "This is Lily," Mark said, placing a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Lily, this is Ms. Parker from my work. You're the lady from the picture on Daddy's desk," Lily exclaimed. "He says you're super smart but kind of scary." Mark felt his face flush with embarrassment, but to his surprise, Emma laughed, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that transformed her face completely. "Is that so?" she asked, crouching down to Lily's level. "Well, I think your daddy is super smart too. And that's an amazing sandcastle you're building. Do you want to help?" "Daddy's been working instead of playing," Lily said with the brutal honesty only children possess. Before Mark could intervene, Emma was nodding. "I'd love to, if that's okay with your dad. I happen to be an expert sandcastle architect." The next hour passed in a blur as Mark watched his stern, professional boss build elaborate sand structures with his daughter, sharing techniques for creating perfect towers and moats. Emma's friend had left, and somehow the three of them had formed an unexpected beach construction crew. Mark found himself relaxing, even joining in, forgetting about reports and deadlines. As the sun dipped lower, Lily grew tired, curling up on their beach blanket with a book. Mark and Emma sat nearby, watching the waves. "I had no idea you were a single parent," Emma said quietly. "You never mentioned it." Mark shrugged. "I try to keep my personal life separate from work. I don't want anyone thinking I can't handle my responsibilities." "I understand that better than most," Emma replied. "When Sophie was younger, I was so afraid of appearing weak or incapable that I never let anyone at work know when I was struggling. I missed her first school play because I was afraid to ask for the afternoon off." "What changed?" Mark asked. Emma's gaze drifted to the horizon. "Sophie got sick, really sick, when she was 9. Pneumonia that turned dangerous quickly. I had to disappear from work for 2 weeks, and I had no choice but to let people in, to ask for help. And you know what? The world didn't end. My team stepped up. My career survived." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Emma spoke again. "Those reports I asked for? They can wait until next week." "Really?" Mark couldn't hide his surprise. "Some things are more important," she said simply. "Like building sandcastles with your daughter on a beautiful evening." As they packed up their beach supplies later, Emma helped fold blankets and shake out towels with practiced efficiency. "Sophie has a soccer game tomorrow afternoon," she mentioned casually. "She's 15 now and claims to be mortified by my presence, but I still go to every game. They usually have good food trucks there. You and Lily would be welcome to join, if you don't have plans." Mark hesitated only briefly before accepting. Something about seeing this other side of Emma, the mother, the widow, the sandcastle builder, had awakened a curiosity he couldn't ignore. That soccer game led to a community theater production the following weekend, which led to a family-friendly hiking excursion, which somehow evolved into regular Sunday dinners where Sophie taught Lily card games while Mark and Emma prepared meals together. Weeks turned into months, and Mark found himself looking forward to these gatherings more than he cared to admit. It wasn't just that Emma was beautiful, though she certainly was, especially when she laughed freely outside the constraints of the office. It was that she understood his life in a way no one else had since Sarah died. She knew the juggling act, the constant guilt, the fear of failing the child who depended solely on you. When Lily had a nightmare at 2 a.m. during their first overnight camping trip as a group, Emma had appeared with hot chocolate and a story about how Sophie had once been afraid of the dark too. At work, their relationship remained professional, though Mark noticed subtle changes. Emma still expected excellence, but she also recognized when family needs took priority. She created a more flexible environment for all her team members, not just Mark, acknowledging that everyone had lives and responsibilities outside the office. 6 months after their beach encounter, Mark found himself sitting across from Emma at a small restaurant while their daughters attended a movie with friends. It was the first time they'd been alone together without the buffer of their children. "I have a confession to make," Mark said, nervously twisting his napkin. "That day on the beach, I overheard your conversation before you saw me. What you said about building the family you need, it changed something for me." Emma's eyes softened. "In what way?" "I'd been so focused on what Lily and I had lost that I couldn't see what we might find. I was trying to be everything for her instead of letting other people in who could love her too." Mark took a deep breath. "People like you and Sophie." Emma reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "For what it's worth, you and Lily have changed our lives too." Sophie smiles more now. "And I." She paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I remember what it feels like to look forward to something again." When Mark finally kissed Emma for the first time that night, standing beside her car under a canopy of stars, it wasn't a beginning so much as an acknowledgement of what had been growing between them for months, a family they were building together, piece by piece. A year later, as they stood together at Lily's mother-daughter dance, Emma officially invited by Lily herself, Mark watched his boss, now his fiancée, twirl his daughter around the dance floor. Lily was laughing, her special occasion dress sparkling under the lights, while Emma matched her movements with exaggerated gestures that made them both dissolve into giggles. From across the room, Sophie caught his eye and gave him a thumbs up. The teenager who had once been suspicious of her mother's new relationship had become Lily's fiercest protector and most enthusiastic sister figure. "Sometimes the family we need isn't the one we're born into, but the one we build along the way," Mark whispered to himself, finally understanding the full weight of Emma's words from that fateful evening on the beach. Their journey hadn't been without challenges. Blending their lives had meant navigating different parenting styles, managing the transition from boss and employee to equals in a relationship, and helping their daughters adjust to new family dynamics. There had been tears and arguments, moments of doubt and fear. But standing there, watching the three most important people in his world together on the dance floor, Mark knew with absolute certainty that some chances were worth taking, some words worth hearing, and some unexpected meetings on beaches worth everything that followed. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Remember that love often finds us in the most unexpected places and through the most unexpected people. Sometimes, the words that change our lives forever come from someone we never imagined could matter so much.